The humanists were our last lesson. So what assumptions about human nature is the basis of humanistic therapy? Well, humanists believe that everybody's good and they're trying to be self-actualized. So that's the answer to that question. And a therapist is going to try to help somebody become self-actualized. More importantly is, for this lesson, cognitive behavioral therapy. This one's probably my favorite and one that I prescribe to. So thoughts turn to things is my summary of cognitive behavioral therapy. So here's my assignment to you right now. Laugh. Ha 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 ha. Ah, ha 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 ha. Thoughts turn to things. If I'm laughing, I don't necessarily have to know why I'm laughing, but remember that our thoughts control much of our behaviors, right? And our emotions. Therefore, changing the way we think will change the way we act and feel. As I've said before, your thoughts and your brain is very powerful. So if we change our false assumptions or thought processes from, oh, well, there's always next year, or to that, rather than I'm a failure and I'm no good, we are going to change our lives. So change false assumptions that I suck and nothing works out for me to it will eventually. Life changes. Cognitive behavioral therapy is masterminded by this man, Ellis, and I'll tell you more about him in class, but he is behind something called rational emotive therapy, RET for short, where we recognize the illogical and self-defeating thoughts and attitudes and then replace those illogical thoughts with ones that are more logical. How do we do that? Through role-playing with a therapist and by challenging clients to change their perspective. It looks like this. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. You can read it. It's also in your notes. And a therapist is going to kind of call a client out on their bogusness. So this isn't true. Rethink that. Another guy is Beck. Beck's cognitive therapy guides the client in testing the logic of their thoughts and developing new ways of thinking. How? Record your thoughts in responses to everyday life and then review those responses with your therapist. So kind of like keeping a journal and recording, like for a week, keep a journal and record all the things that you think. And then when you go back to see your therapist, this is what I thought in response to blah, blah, blah. And he's going to call out your bogusness too. More on that in a minute. Does it work? Yes, it works for depression, even major depression. It's used to treat anxiety, OCD, and personality disorders. So these are a little bit more practical than something like psychoanalysis. And here's a review of Ellis's logical thought paths. So he calls these ABCs, the activating event, the belief, and then the consequent emotion that follows the irrational thoughts, the illogical thoughts. So an activating event may be the thought that I suck, the belief I'm never going to go to college, and the consequent emotion being unhappy, depressed. The therapist is going to work on B, that belief. We got to change our beliefs about this. Now we shift from cognitive behavioral therapy, where we pair the thoughts with the behavior, to simply behavioral therapy. And you have to have a review of operant conditioning for this one. And remember little Albert and learning to fear fuzzy rats. That'll help. With behaviors that are learned, they can be unlearned. And that's really the goal of behavioral therapy. So we want to eliminate unwanted behavior or acquire desirable behavior. And the ways that we do that include counter-conditioning and operant conditioning. When we counter-condition, we unlearn a learned behavior, and then operant is rewards and punishments. So those strategies look like this. Counter-conditioning pairs the stimulus that triggers unwanted behaviors with more desirable behaviors through using systematic desensitization, modeling, and aversive conditioning. So systematic desensitization will include things like, if I'm afraid of a fly, I'm going to think of a fly and work through the anxiety. If that's too much, then we're going to go back and relearn how to be relaxed around a fly. Same thing with snakes. If I have a fear of snakes, people are taught relaxation techniques and then are gradually exposed to the feared stimulus using the relaxation technique. Think of a snake, deep breathing exercise, meditation. And then maybe you bring a snake into the room, deep breathing and exercises, continuing on to the relaxation. If that doesn't work, it can be paired with modeling. So the person comes into the room messing with a snake in a positive way. Snakes are pets for some people, so they can find a snake that's not going to hurt anybody, I guess. Client observes and imitates the behavior, and then eventually, through using the relaxation techniques, it's associative learning. You pair the relaxation with the aversive stimulus, and together you can unlearn the fear of the stimulus. Aversive conditioning is replacing positive response with a negative response to a behavior. So aversive is you add an unpleasant stimulus. So if my reward for drinking alcohol eases my social anxiety, well, then what I can do is add an unpleasant stimulus to the response of drinking alcohol. Previously, drinking alcohol eased my anxiety. Now I'm going to take medication that makes me throw up. And when I drink alcohol, I'm going to be sick, which if everybody drinks too much alcohol, they're going to be sick. But in aversive conditioning, you throw up when you drink. And so that's supposed to eliminate the desire to drink. Now, spoiler alert, sometimes people can just unlearn the learned response of the aversive conditioning. So if you're addicted to biting your nails and you paint your nails with some nasty tasting nail polish, people just fight through the nasty tasting nail polish and get to the good stuff. So where we can learn something, we can unlearn it. Our brains are very powerful, and we can override those systems. So aversive conditioning, does it work? Yes and no. Operant conditioning can also be used to, for behavior. And here you got some criminals. We don't want this guy punching people in the face, and so we give him a steak to tame that behavior. A token economy is a system in which desired behaviors are reinforced with tokens that may be exchanged for privileges. So in the prison systems, privileges like snacks can be given, TV time, jail time, gym time. Look, this is what public school is modeled on, is a token economy. We'll talk more about it. The term successive approximations are the series of behaviors they gradually move closer to the target behavior. So kind of like the schedules of reinforcement. You show up on time 10 times, then you get a free prize. And finally, modeling social skills and getting along with others is positively reinforced with more time at the gym. You get to pump out more reps of the bench press. Does token economy work? Does behavior therapy work? Yes, it does. It works with phobias, PTSD, social problems, self-control. It works best. I'm not a therapist, but I'm going to say it probably works best when it's initiated by the client themselves, when they can get on board with it. I showed you the guy with the beans. He was afraid of the beans. He had a phobia of the beans. That was systematic desensitization. Eventually, he was able to look at those beans where previously maybe he couldn't even have any sort of relationship with beans.